up their
Okay.
YouTube stuff up.
Okay, welcome everybody to our Finance Policy, Operations and Legislation Committee, 8th of March 2023. We acknowledge the Whadjuk people as the traditional owners of the Greater Fremantle-Walyalup area, and we recognise that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. For attendance, the Mayor and Councillor Pemberton are both running late but indicated they would be here shortly. I don't believe there are any apologies, no. Any leaves of absence? No. Disclosures of interest by members? No. Responses to previous questions, there are none, I don't believe. Public question time, there are no members of the public. Petitions, are there any petitions? No. Deputations, there are none. The confirmation of the minutes, I'll move the minutes of the FPOL meeting dated 8th of February 2023. Is there a seconder? Councillor Thompson has seconded that. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Elected member communication. Is there any elected member communication? There is none. So we'll now deal. Sorry, I've got an ant. Now deal with items under committee delegation. I'll move FPOL 23-303-1, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Is there any discussion on this item, which is the CAT Management Amendment Local Law? No discussion. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried.
4-1. Councillor Busey was again.
Yes, yeah.
Can you just acknowledge?
Sorry, yes. Oh, sorry, that was carried 4-1. Councillor Busich voted against it. I'll move FPOL 2303-2, the South Beach Place Plan, to draft South Beach Place Plan, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Is there any discussion on this item? No, this is going out for public comment. So, all those in favour of the item? Sure. Yes, Councillor Vucic wishes to speak.
Okay. Look, I'm not going to say a great deal about it, but I just find that, you know, I probably will support this motion, but not because I've got a great deal of faith in the grand plan and that will materialise anytime soon. You know, I'm big on community consultation, and I think consultation is important. But sometimes we consult, and you know, it doesn't change anything in terms of actioning some of the items. I'm specifically concerned about the South Beach toilets and change rooms. I don't see them built in the next 12 months. I think the community have waited long enough, and I don't want to think like this, but I'm thinking this is just kicking the can down the road for another year or two, and we know how the budget goes around and round. I just think there's a lot of words, and there's a lot of millions of dollars of expenditure that we'd like to see happen in that particular part of the city. I just can't see it happening, and I can't even put myself down 10 years unless we win lotto or have a state government that comes and is really nice to us in terms of our finances. So I will support it, but I'm really frustrated as well.
Thank you. Councillor Moughlin.
Thank you. Can I just ask a question of staff? Councillor Vucic referred to the toilet shower down in South Beach, but as I understand it, this particular piece of work was triggered by that infrastructure change, but we have money budgeted this year, and the plan then is to budget for subsequent years to replace those, and that this is not linked to the place plan at all.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Yeah, that's correct.
while we got you, Grave, then we're on record that we're going to get the change rooms in the next 12 months.
Sorry, through the chair. There's budget allocation for the construction of the change room. We're going through detailed design. I think from memory, we'd anticipated trying to get the project demolished, or the existing building demolished prior to Christmas, and hopefully starting construction after summer.
It is in, I think it's in 3 years of budget, so it's spread over a 3-year period. That's my understanding. Yeah. It'll be done within 3 years. That was always the plan. Yep. Could I just mention too that this place plan is the precursor to the master plan, and it is a 10-year plan. So it's
Yeah, I know the chair. I really do, but I also know 3 years doesn't inspire me with a great deal of confidence. Thank you.
I'll just note that Councillor Pemberton has arrived. Thank you. Sorry, just give me a second. Okay, Councillor Pemberton, we've just dealt with the draft South Beach place plan. So we didn't vote on that, did we? No. So we need to take a vote unless you wish to speak on the item. No.
Welcome to make a comment if you want to.
Yep. Okay. So all those in favour of the motion that's before us, that is unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move FPOL 2303-3, the proposed lease for Fremantle Leisure Centre kiosk. Is there a seconder? Councillor Pemberton, is there any discussion on this item? All those in favour of the motion? That is also unanimous. Thank you. I'll move FPOL 2303-4, which is the dog exercise areas and management planning. Seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Is there any discussion on this item? Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you. I think the report and officers' suggestions and so on address the sort of things that we were talking about and looking for. But one thing that I just wanted to raise in terms of that broader issue of dog management in relation to working with dog owners to minimise the kind of negative impacts and so on. I think, the dog training that we're running at present is a really good start, and it's a great sign that it's been so popular and well received and used by our community members. One thing I think is also a really key issue is dogs barking, and I've had a bit of an issue with that where I live at the moment, and usually, and at the moment I'm living in a slightly different location, and it's really interesting because there are two dogs that just bark constantly. I was woken up at 6 a.m. this morning with yapping, and I think that this is a growing problem as more and more people have dogs and in high density environments, and either they're not aware of it or they're just ignoring it, not taking responsibility for it, and certainly talking to other neighbours who are impacted by it. It is quite disruptive to people's lives, and I think we need to perhaps integrate that as an issue in terms of how we engage with dog owners in Fremantle around bringing their attention to the fact that dogs barking constantly or at all hours of the night or day is not acceptable, and it is actually an issue they need to address, and they can address, and they need to address it.
Great, thank you. Councillor Moughlin?
Thank you. And I suppose to carry on from Councillor Pemberton's point as well, I think the training for dog owners is really, really valuable, and I thank staff for bringing that forward. I think the other part that's really important is for dog owners to understand their obligations as owners of dogs, whether that be what their dog's doing in a private space or in a public space. And the report from officers clearly points out that there are some areas in Freo which are doing the heavy lifting for the city, and particularly school ovals are starting to wear the brunt of that. And as it rightfully points out, there are risks associated with those areas being closed off due to the behaviour of dog owners. I'm not going to say dogs, but dog owners and how they treat those areas. And I think it'd be really important for us to make sure that those obligations are well known. And yeah, I suppose it would be interesting to understand as well, and I know around those school spaces, whether we have looked at enforcement action at times and what our ability is to do so, considering that it isn't council land. So maybe as a question to officers around our ability to enforce the obligations for dog owners in those areas, that would be good to understand. If possible now or sometime in the future. But if we're not able to have an answer now, I suppose, yeah, it is a question that if we are relying on those spaces to, as I said, take the heavy lifting of dog ownership, then yeah, I think we need to be able to have some enforcement. And if we can't, how do we work with those owners to look after those areas?
I agree with you. I'm not sure there's enough open space in Fremantle for us not to rely on external parties to help us out. So working with the community in those areas is very important, and I agree. I think we need to engage, especially because it's mainly schools, isn't it? Let's be realistic. They are struggling with it because it's not their core activity, and they're actually just really helping out a little bit. So maybe we continue an engagement program through the schools as well, where sometimes we're down there helping out with some of that training and conversations about responsible dog ownership.
Yep, excellent point. Councillor Kamada.
Yeah, look, I agree with the comments made, and just an additional comment. I was pleased to see that we're looking at future development areas that to alleviate the pressure. I think these are really. I commend the officers on the work that's been done, and I think these are really. It's a good outcome for the current situation, but as the population grows, as number grows, we've really got to be mindful that we do develop new areas that can be used in future.
I'll also mention that the public open space strategy is currently under review, and it will be completed and brought back to FPOL, I guess, in May this year. So that will also inform us a lot about what the public open space activities are and how that's all operating, and that will be a good balance for us in looking at the dog issues in more detail. Is there any further discussion on this item? All those in favour of the motion? That is unanimous. Thank you. So we'll now move to the council decision items. So these will go on to full council. I'll move FPOL 2303-5, which is the Fremantle Oval establishment of a principal stakeholder working group.
I will move the officer amended recommendation, which
yes.
just acknowledge the ex officio.
Correct. Yes, there is an amendment to that. So I'll move the amended recommendation, which includes the Mayor as an ex officio member of that committee. So in moving that, seconded by Councillor Thompson, is there any discussion on this item? Okay, all those in favour of the motion? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. So that will go on to full council. I'll move FPOL 2303-6, which is the proposed public road closure of a setback portion of Hampton Road. Seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Is there any discussion on this one? All those in... Sorry, Councillor Moughlin.
Yeah, just a question for staff. I haven't seen this before, and the taking or the road closure. How does this actually work? Then it gets taken into the title of the new land. The title of the land then just essentially subsumes this parcel of the road. Is that the case?
Through the chair, yes, effectively an amalgamation of the land. I believe the adjacent blocks have also had this done over time as well, under a similar process.
Just through the chair, there'll be a negotiation with state government about payment for the land, though. Yeah.
Great. I'll just mention that the Mayor has now arrived and we are just dealing with the item on Hampton Road, which is number 6. So, so if there is no further discussion on that item, is there any further discussion? No. All those in favour of that particular item? Those against? Councillor Vucic is against. Thank you. We now deal with FPOL item 7, which is the voice to Parliament, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Is there any discussion on this item? There is an amendment by the Mayor. Would you like to move this amendment?
Yeah, I'm happy to move the amendment if I have a seconder. Councillor Thompson. So this amendment really was to recognise that it's not yet clear what the Yes campaign will be doing in Western Australia, and that they are yet to, we understand, very imminently appoint a Western Australian coordinator. So while we do have some indicative ideas about what we could do, I think it's more about the in principle support of allocating some funding towards this and deciding as we go forward with the Yes campaign what the most appropriate way to spend that money would be. So it's a budget of up to $35,500. We know that that would cover some of these kind of activations. I think what we intended with this would be to follow through on our commitment to the Uluru Statement, which obviously is a council position, and to identify some ways that at a very grassroots level we could get involved in the campaign. I think it's interesting to look at other local governments who are doing this. So I think some people would argue that this is not a territory for local governments to foray into, but I think where you have a very active and engaged Aboriginal community and RAP group and plan, which is something that we've been very fortunate to have here in Fremantle, and you've had very clear instruction and request from that group to make this the absolute priority to focus on for what is a very important year. It's very hard to ignore those calls. I've noticed Inner West Sydney is going well above and beyond what we might be doing as a local government, so it's certainly not unprecedented. But I think for those who would criticise this as being, not our business, I think you've got to look to our community, and our community very much on two levels is deeply engaged in this, whether it's Aboriginal people who obviously this is a key moment in history. History isn't something that's just about looking backwards towards heritage and history. It's about moving forward and addressing some of the wrongs of the past and being part of changing history. But also our broader community who actively want to be involved in any way they can to improve reconciliation in Australia and recognition in Australia. So this is not a huge budget. What it does do is effectively engage people in civics education, which is useful in all kinds of ways. So understanding better how government works, how a constitution works, and what a voice to Parliament might be is beneficial in a number of different ways. And as the level of government closest to the people, I think it's really incumbent on us to take some action at a very grassroots level that likely no one else is going to do to empower the Fremantle community to be involved in this discussion. So I hope you will support the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Vucic.
Sorry, I'd like your indulgence because I'm going to present some information, and it might take me a little bit of time. And this is background to a decision. I'd like to take you to the Australian census in 2021. We have 812,000 people who identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. And they represent 3.2% of the population. There are an estimated 26 MPs in Australia, in Australian parliaments, who identify as Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islanders. And that is all of our parliaments. I want to just point to a few firsts. The first Member of Parliament in Australia was Neville Bonner, a Liberal. He was appointed to the Senate in June 1971, although David Kennedy was really the first Labor member for Bendigo to join the House of Representatives in 1969. The reason why they don't count him as the first is because he didn't identify as an Indigenous person. We have a first in Nova Peris, ALP, elected to the Senate in 2013. We have the first Aboriginal to hold a ministerial and cabinet role, Ernie Bridge, ALP, Minister for Water Resources and a number of other portfolios. Marion Scrimger, ALP, Northern Territory, 2007. Adam Giles served as Chief Minister of the Northern Territory, 2013 to 2016. Aidan Ridgway, Australian Democrats. Australian Democrats was the first Aboriginal MP to use an Indigenous language in federal parliament. I want to go back to 1842 very, very briefly, and there's a reason why I want to go there. And it concerns a lady, a Noongar lady by the name of Fanny Ulreel, who was born in the Upper Swan region. Now, Fanny came to prominence through the writings of anthropologist Daisy Bates, and this is coming from her writings. Fanny experienced the effects of European settlement firsthand as she watched her bountiful country disappear beneath the infrastructure of colonial settlement. A very forthright woman, she is now recognised as both an agitator and defender of the rights and values of a fast disappearing people. One of her favourite annoyances was to stand at the gates of our present government house, reviling all who dwelt within, in that the stone gates, guarded by a sentry, enclosed her grandmother's burial ground. Fanny passed away in 1907 at the Perth Public Hospital, which is now the Royal Perth Hospital, and is buried in an unmarked grave at Karrakatta Cemetery, where an unnamed relative heard of her passing. He uttered in his language, "Her heart has ceased to beat." Really important moments where ordinary people did extraordinary things. Fast forward to 2015, 2016, the Australian government directly spent $14.7 billion on Indigenous people, of which 77%, $11.3 billion, was through mainstream programs such as Medicare, social security payments, childcare benefits, and support for university places accessed by Indigenous people. Around 23%, $33 billion, was on Indigenous specific programs such as AbStudy and Indigenous specific health programs and the Ranger programs. Just think of the work that goes into getting elected into Parliament. Just think of the efforts that each and every one of our elected local members put in to get elected, and then multiply it some to get into state and federal Parliament. Just think of the courage of Fanny standing up and the subsequent generations who have reached the highest office in our country. This deserves a huge celebration. And I just touched the iceberg when I was doing this research. There is so much information out there. The Australian voter judged the candidates before them, state and federally, when they voted, on the contents of their character and not by the colour of their skin. The stats are 32% of the population with an estimated 26 MPs. Very impressive. This data is about heroes, not victimhood. We have and will continue to add Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders' voices to Parliament. This is an ongoing process. And our process has demonstrated that representative democracy isn't broken, it works, and it works well. As a local government, we have no remit to get involved in this issue. As private citizens, we are at liberty to provide support if we choose. Maria Vusic may well decide something differently to Councillor Vusic on this particular issue. But I doubt that this will stop this council from making a push on this agenda. We have a motion before the chamber that only looks at supporting the yes vote. We only want to have a conversation with ourselves, multiplied around the city and suburbs. It is self-evident that you cannot have a meaningful conversation with yourself. It is an act that can still get you certified as mentally unfit. Using the ratepayers' resources to fund a one-sided argument is, in my view, a breach of trust of our oath of office. And it basically, just a few lines, it says that we elected and that we declare when we take office upon ourselves to act duly, honestly and with integrity to fulfil the duties of the office for the people in the district, not some of the people, all of the people. That's my interpretation, and I think it's a reasonable interpretation. We are bound to represent all ratepayers and residents, and our key role is the provision of basic services. All you need to do is go onto the WALGA website, and it clearly spells out our key duties as at a local level. Now let's go back to page 54 of our agenda. It states that our ratepayers and residents what will they get for $35,500? They'll get kitchen table conversations, staff and volunteer training, community kitchen table conversations, history centre installations. Now that's an interesting one because I went to a meeting yesterday for a local history to how we're going to invigorate the local history of Fremantle. You know, I sort of look at it, are we only interested in one aspect of that history or are we looking at all of the history? Disclosure panel presentations and communication campaign and communications and its impact on campaigns. In my view, this motion lacks tolerance, inclusion, and respect for diversity in all of its shades. This motion divides Australians and seeks to promote the victimhood narrative. There is something else I found in my research, and it goes like this. Most Aboriginal people don't trust government. After years of broken promises, exclusion, discrimination, and state-sanctioned genocide, it's not hard to see why. The voice to Parliament will add another level of unelected ideologues who know what is best for us all. In my view, nothing much will change for the Indigenous people. I will not be voting for this motion simply because I'm bound by my oath to represent everybody. But I do have two questions for the Mayor. First question, will you provide equal resources to the no side of the issue? Oh, both questions. And why are you afraid to have an open debate on this issue?
So perhaps I can make it very clear that the Council already has a position to support the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which encompasses voice, treaty and truth. If you would want to rescind that position, you would need to move a motion to rescind that position of Council. I'm supporting the Council position, which is to support the Uluru Statement in full. Voice is the first element of that. So that is why I would, I'm not putting forward the proposal. I'm actually putting forward an amendment, and we are speaking on the amendment at the moment. But by supporting the Uluru Statement, which is our council position, which binds all of us around this room, that is supporting the Yes campaign for the voice.
Can I just say, does the Uluru Statement disqualify any other discussion, any other point of view on it? Well,
I think that is a general question, and one perhaps for general discussion later on outside of the committee. So, Councillor Vucic, I'll take it you've completed your statement.
yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Lorver wishes to speak. And could I also just add too that the vote tonight is not just the Mayor's role. She has put in an amendment, but it is a vote of this committee, which will then go on to full council. So.
Yep. And yeah, I'm not.
Councillor Lorver, could I just ask a question, because we are dealing I've just been reminded we are dealing with the amendment at this point. So if you wish to speak on the whole motion,
I'll wait.
Okay, thank you. So is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the amendment? And I apologise, I should have understood that when Councillor Vucic was speaking. So on the amendment, all those in favour?
Yep.
Sorry, Councillor Mofflin wishes to speak on the amendment.
So, yeah, I just wanted to get clarity around points 2 and 3, where we're saying provisionally adopts a budget of up to 35,500, and then it just seems that we repeat in point 3. I just wanted to get clarification around that, and should we just be stating it once?
I would be really happy to include the deletion of point 3, because I think you're correct that we are really saying the same thing twice, and probably through cut and pasting, I didn't make that necessarily clearly enough.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
go for it.
before
Sorry,
we
no, I haven't got
do
anything else.
that. Yeah.
I support the suggestion that's just been made. With regards to the word provisionally, I'm just wondering how practical that is, because I'm assuming that some of this needs to be committed or spent this financial year. Like, we're not going to start in July. This
Correct.
is starting in May. So shouldn't it just be adopts, because provisionally indicates we're going to make another decision at some later time, which
I think I was looking for a word that says up. It's up to this amount.
Yeah, so adopts a budget of up to.
Yep, I'm comfortable with that as well, because it is out of the 2022-23 budget. So
yeah, thanks.
Yep, all good. Thank you for workshopping something I wrote very quickly.
Thank you. So the amendment has been moved and seconded, and the seconder is happy with the change. Yep. Is there any discussion from the staff over the deletion of part 3? No?
Yeah.
We can't really adopt an up to budget, so we're going to have to adopt the 35,500, which is why we left part 3 in there, by the way.
Right.
Because it doesn't really state it well to say up to. It's not clear enough.
But we don't have to spend it all.
No, we don't ever have to spend all of our budget.
All right. So there's some words you'd want to change to.
I think we just need to say adopts a budget of.
Yeah. From unfunded expenditure in the 2022-23 budget. Do you want to move that up to the?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Clear as mud.
Could we just get that final layout? Councillor Sullivan wishes to make
just
a comment.
A further question on that. I mean, obviously, council has to approve budget amendments. So, just a question to staff: does that wording approve a budget amendment in the correct manner required under local government? Because I mean, that's obviously what we're trying to do, or the committee is trying to do. But does it? Do you actually need to say adopts a budget amendment to basically amend the budget?
Fine, that's exactly what we're doing.
Just after budget. Perhaps could I suggest we say adopts a budget amendment of 35,500. Yep.
You are amending the budget.
So are we all there on the amendment? Yep. Is everybody comfortable with what's written up there? Yeah. Okay, so to vote on the amendment, all those in favour? Those against? Councillor Vucic is against. So now we're dealing with the entire motion. Councillor Lorver.
Great, thank you. And I'll just be really brief. I just was listening to the comments, and I want to thank the mayor and the staff for putting this forward. I think this is a very important thing for us to do. You know, be helping folks in our community at the end of the day learn and share their knowledge with their neighbors on such an important issue. And I think there'll be a lot of people that are very, very excited about this. When we talk about representation in parliaments, it's different in the United States where individuals are elected and you can have differing views. But when you're elected as an MP with a party, you have to represent that party's position. So you're not actually, you know, representing a personal view. And that's, you know, borne out when we saw some senators quit their party over this issue because they're, in one case, the view wasn't far on one side enough and on the other. So to have this voice to Parliament is very important because, as Councillor Vucic stated, there's, you know, over $14 billion spent on programs, and then having that voice will help ensure that that money is spent in a way that actually benefits these communities. And you know, I think that there is a lot of kind of, you know, misinformation out about this, and so by us dedicating some funds to get some real good information out there and what this actually is going to do and what it will achieve, I think will be very, very helpful for our community. So thank the committee for considering this and for the mayor's amendment. And if I could vote, I would be voting yes.
Thank you. So we've now discussed the entire motion. Is there any further comment? Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you. And as the person who moved the motion in 2018 to support the Voice to Parliament, I am very proud of this council for having taken that position, particularly so early when it was still quite controversial and misunderstood. I think this is a good strategy, and I like the fact that we are putting some money into having a informed conversation with our community about this. I was actually tempted to put forward a motion that I didn't think would get much support, but to go the higher level. I guess particularly because, you know, to me it feels like a really worthwhile investment to making really important structural change that will have tangible benefits for the most disadvantaged people in our community. And yes, noting that they are just 3.2% of our community means that if it's a numbers game, they never win. And I also note that in my door knocking in 2019, when I was re-elected for the third time, was after the motion about the Voice to Parliament. And it was actually surprising how often this issue came up among people when knocking on the doors. It is something that our community cares deeply about and wants to be able to do something about. And I suspect that there's a lot of people out there who are kind of just not sure if this is the right way or what it means and all that sort of stuff. So I think having a bit of resources to be able to have a meaningful conversation with our community so that they can get clear on those things is really worthwhile. I may consider an amendment for full council when this comes to top it up just slightly, partly because I think the business window option is quite a good one, both in terms of sort of activation and that sort of stuff, but that real grassroots presence and so on. I also note that the VR thing that is proposed is a really amazing kind of initiative that I think would be really good for us to support, if not in this campaign, in some other way. And on that, I also think that the cultural awareness training that was made available to us as elected members through the RAP process, as well as to new staff, was so incredibly valuable in terms of being able to understand the issues and the implications and the systemic structural issues that continue to significantly impact First Nations people today in our community in Freo and beyond. And in some ways, I almost want us to have a line item for that in itself around, like, partly as part of this campaign to help others kind of explore those ideas and get some of that understanding that I feel so fortunate to have had with most of you here in the room. And I know that we did offer that cultural awareness training as part of the one-day event, at least on one year, if not another. But I do think that that is also an ongoing thing that would be really worthwhile offering up to our community, either as a subsidised thing or a fully fee-for-service kind of thing, through the Meeting Place program or something else. But again, I think that is about growing understanding as well as having connection to local Aboriginal people, because some people don't get the chance to ask those difficult questions or hear those difficult stories and explore the issues and so on. And I think when you start to get your head around that, it becomes really clear that there's still a lot of work to be done. And while some people see it as an either or kind of situation of, tangible improvements as far as closing the gap versus, symbolic motions such as, a treaty or a voice to parliament and so on, they are actually deeply linked, because First Nations people have existed in context where it's been a very patriarchal styled, like paternal type of environment of doing to as opposed to doing with, or, and so on. And even when things are with the best intentions, often, it's really disempowering when people don't have agency over their own lives and the decisions that affect them. And I think the voice is a way of trying to address that. Now, we don't quite know what it looks like and we don't know if it'll be perfect, but I think it's a really good step in the right direction, and it's well overdue, and it has the potential to deliver really good, tangible benefits to people in terms of the closing the gap strategies and so on. So yeah, I really appreciate the work that's been done in the background to bring this together. I think it's a good, practical and kind of diverse range of activities to try and get our community to be informed when they make their decision and understand the issues and so on. But I also think that hopefully, that maybe we could do a little bit more, but also that this is just part of our ongoing work in this space around the Reconciliation Action Plan and, creating a better environment for us and them and all of us together.
Thank you, Councillor Pemberton. Is there any further discussion on the motion as a whole? Councillor Kamada.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. I've got a lot to learn about what goes on in this space. I've, in my discussions with the community, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, it's certainly an issue that does require engagement and discussion. And I'd love for this to be paid for by someone else other than the council, but that's obviously not going to be the case. And so we're using ratepayers' money, and we do have to be responsible with that money. I do understand, I can see where Councillor Vucic is coming from, in that there's a lot of questions, and Councillor Pemberton touched on it. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, and that scares a lot of people. So we do have to have open discussion. We have to be, open to hearing both sides of the discussion and making sure that, we get the best possible outcome, because if we don't, we're not going to get, the misconceptions will become greater. So it's really important that we're open to those discussions and that we clear those sorts of things up, because this is an issue that is not going to go away. It's going to take time, and this is a start. And the people, it's very important to a lot of the people that I've been speaking to. And then there are those on the other side of the fence that see it differently. So to bring people together, we have to be able to listen to both sides. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
This is the third debate that I've had on this issue. Once at the zone, once at full council, at full state council, and now again here. Um, I actually probably disagree with the idea that we should put money towards it, even though I vote for it and I'll support it. Because, to be honest, I think what we are doing is, as an organisation, we are making a symbolic statement. So whether we spend 35,000 or 75,000, it's not. That's just simply to show that we're serious about it. Is kind of put your money where your mouth is. But I don't think that our contribution is going to make that great a difference. So in that sense, I'm happy to go along with it. But I agree with Councillor Kamada. I'd actually prefer it was paid for by the people, to be quite honest. But as I said, I'm happy with that, with the recommendation as it is. I think, from my point of view, I think it's important for institutions and organisations, particularly ones that are supposedly representative, like ourselves, to take a stance. I have listened, especially at State Council, to all of the arguments for Walga not to take a position. In fact, Walga to stay out of it because it's politics. Well, give me a break, because everything that Walga does is politics, so is political. And it was interesting that the debate there focused on the age-old things, not enough information, we shouldn't be taking a position, leave it up to councils. Okay. At the end of the day, Walga did not take a position. It just simply asked for more information and wanted to make sure that enough information was provided by the states and federal governments, and etc. So it actually had a motion, a recommendation to say that Walga would not take a position, and luckily we took that statement out. So now, not only do we not take a position, but we are silent on whether we were going to or not. I think, and I do respect the right of people to oppose the idea of the voice to Parliament. I have some difficulty sometimes in listening to the reasons for not supporting it, but I do recognise that, and it was interesting at Walga that there was a direct country metro divide on the way that most state councillors voted. And I listened to some arguments from at Walga, and it's probably the first time for a long time at Walga where I've thought, what am I doing here? Because it was not a debate that I liked. It was not a position I liked being put in, and I just questioned where some people were coming from. So that's why I have this dilemma, that I respect people's rights to either not have a position on the voice to Parliament or to oppose it. But I have difficulty in listening to some of the arguments put forward and agreeing with them. So, as I said, personally, I agree with Councillor Kamada and Councillor Vucic that I'd probably prefer somebody else paying for it. But at the end of the day, we have made our decision, and I am pleased that we have made the decision to support the voice to Parliament, and it's certainly one that I think that as an organisation we should be proud of, and we're putting our hearts where our mouths is, mouth where our hearts is, one of the two.
Councillor Moughlin.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the input of my colleagues on this discussion, and I think the Mayor made a really good point that we do have that position that Councillor Pemberton did bring to Council in 2018 and to support the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and voice being the first aspect of that is very, very clear, and it's it is a position that this council holds. I suppose for me, listening to the discussion around the room, and these are discussions that are going to be happening around the country for the next 6 to 10 months or so, whatever it might be, and that most probably consolidated in my mind the reason why we can contribute to this, to support that conversation. there are a lot of misunderstandings and mistruths that are floating around, and particularly, some of the points that were raised about additional layers of bureaucracy and unelected officials is simply untrue, and the role of the voice to Parliament simply being an advisory body to be able to represent the views of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, as opposed to, as Councillor Lorver pointed out, representing the views of a party. So it actually removes party politics from that voice that is then considered by a parliament who, ultimately has the role of making laws. But I love the idea of a voice to parliament because it is actually informing those people who are making laws about a particular group of people, and they are able to have that voice heard. So I'm proud to say that I'm part of a local government that is putting this forward, and I look forward to us voting on this at full council when it comes forward.
Great. Is there any further comment? No? Well, I do support this. I think it would be really important to get good information into the community, as has already been said. And I'm quite sure the people of Fremantle will make their own minds up. So it will be good to get that info out there. So the debate having concluded, all those in favour? Those against? Councillor Vucic is against. Sorry. We now move to item 8, which is the Perth Festival High Voltage Sponsorship Request. I'll move that item. Seconded by the Mayor. Is there any discussion on this item? No? Well, then I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Vucic is against, and that is carried. There are no motions of which previous notice has been given, no urgent business, nor late items, nor confidential business, and therefore I'll declare the meeting closed at